I couldn't believe this happened to our family.
Why aren't people screaming from the rooftops that this is dangerous?
Because someone made one stupid mistake. I'm an only child.
I said, you've got to stop this. I said, you're going to have a wreck.
I went out and had the opportunity to marry my son and daughter-in-law about 6 years ago, and Callie was born on Christmas Day then, about 3 years later. She was a joy, I have to say. Probably 4 or 5 months before this. She was at home and she said to her mother, I want to go to school. And her mom said, well, you can go to school if you can say your ABCs and your 1, 2, 3s. So Callie rips off her ABCs in English and then does them in Chinese, and did the same thing with her numbers in English and Chinese. So she was a very intelligent kid. And then it puts the parent in a very difficult position. Then what do you tell her? Okay. She used to love to go to this place called Sunrise Park, which is about 1.5 blocks from her house. And so her mother took her to Sunrise Park on December 1st, and they went to the park, played for about an hour, and it was time to go home. And they left the park, then stopped at the curb, and they walked then from that point on the curb across a bike lane, which was another 5 feet, into the roadway, at which point in about the center of the roadway was where the driver hit Callie and killed her instantly. The day of the accident, we were in, and our son called us and said that Callie and Ling had been in an accident. Callie had been killed, and Ling was in critical condition at the hospital. I mean, it was a huge loss for us. Even though we lost her, we want everything that happened because of it to change other people's behavior, and to think about what they're doing and how they're doing it, and why it's so important not to do those things. You know, paying attention to a text message in the car and not paying attention to what's going on out in front of you, which is where your eyes should be, okay, can cause you to kill somebody. Everybody in the car is somewhat responsible, okay, for the actions of a driver who violates the law and texts while they're driving. Even if it's not a law in your state, okay, doing that has severe repercussions to not only yourself, but to others. And the impact that you have when you injure someone, that spreads to so many members of a family and goes to so many people in the community. It's devastating. Distracted driving kills. Safe driving starts with you.
911, what's the address of the emergency? It's the highway, coming west in the Logan. Hurry, send an ambulance. Is he breathing? They say he's not breathing. Okay, can we start CPR? Hello, this is Mike Harper. I'm emergency medical technician. We have 21085 echoes here.
You know, you leave for work every morning. Never, ever do you leave with the intention to hurt someone. When I left that morning, that was definitely not my intention to hurt or harm anyone. And I took 2 lives.
I looked around the room and I saw Jim's license in the hands of one of the police officers. And I just started crying and repeating the word no.
Keith was my whole world. He had his work and he was so important to his work and his work for him. But for me, he was my whole world.
On the morning of September 22nd, 2006, Reggie Shaw was driving a vehicle on the Valley View Highway. Another car was following him. It was driven by a fellow, Mr. Kaiserman.
The driver of the vehicle ahead of me had seemed to be distracted most of the way over the mountain, had crossed over the center line on more than one occasion. And I do remember on that particular occasion of the accident that as he crossed over the center line, and you do the math in your head and you see the car coming, you think this is not going to be good.
When Reggie's car crossed the center line and clipped this other vehicle, it caused the vehicle to spin out of control. Mr. Kaiserman's truck impacted the Fafaro vehicle. The combined speed of both vehicles would probably be close to 100 miles an hour.
My name is Bart Rinlesbacher. I'm a trooper with the Utah Highway Patrol. I was the investigating officer on the Reggie Shaw crash. I think the average person upon seeing this would be horrified. I know that in my 15 years in law enforcement, I've dealt with this numerous times, and I still rarely sleep at night when I handle a fatality-involved accident.
I was sending and receiving text messages when I drifted across the center line and struck another car. They were both killed on impact.
And I remembered being so shocked that someone could be so selfish and irresponsible and killed my husband.
Driving while texting is very comparable to driving while you're under the influence, and in fact it's more dangerous in many cases than driving while you're under the influence of alcohol.
My name is David Strayer, and I'm a professor of psychology at the University of Utah. Drivers who are text messaging or even talking on their cell phone suffer from something called inattention blindness, where something as obvious as a gorilla walking across the street, you're blind to it. You don't see it because your mind is so preoccupied or absorbed with the phone conversation or the text message that you just don't see the obvious thing that everybody else would see. About 80% of accidents on our highway are due to some form of driver distraction, where your mind's taken off the road for some period of time. And given that we have upwards of 40,000 fatalities on the highway every year, it's a significant problem.
You know, it pretty much runs my life. Everything I do on a daily basis is kind of centered around that accident and what happened.
Things came easy for him. He athletics. I loved basketball. Just loved playing basketball, and he played football. He enjoyed that, and then he got into track, and he never ran track before, and didn't have anybody to run hurdles, and he said, "Oh, I'll do it." He just a special kid.
I don't think anyone feels that Reggie Shaw is a bad person. There's nobody that feels that. He just made a terrible decision in texting.
So we charged Mr. Shaw with negligent homicide. That is, by texting while driving, he wasn't exercising the due care that a person should use when they're driving a vehicle.
You cannot believe the immense tragedy this case caused in so many people's lives.
The fact that he killed two men, that has to be such a difficult burden. And I think he's a very, very good kid who did just a really dumb thing.
He's going to jail. Cache County Jail.
To Reggie, who's never been away from home unless it was for something positive, every day will seem like an eternity for him. He will be in general population, so he will be with people that have long criminal histories.
He will be around some very unsavory people.
We worked out a deal where Reggie had to go into different schools and do a presentation on the dangers of texting and driving.
Okay, I was texting and driving.
I was 19 years old. I thought it was safe. I thought it was something that I could do, that I could drive down the road and send a text message and be safe and drive just fine, not hurt anybody. Cross the center line, 2 men killed.
You don't want to have to get up every morning thinking of a tragic accident that maybe you could have prevented. You don't want to live with that.
You know, that camaraderie of being together is gone. And I mean, we were going to grow old together and retire and all these things, and that's not going to happen. I mean, he's not going to be there when they get married. He won't be walking them down the aisle. He won't be, all those things that dads typically do, he's not going to be there to do.
Every decision was made together. What if, if he wanted something special from the grocery store, or if we were planning a trip, it was just always done together. He was everything for me.
It's been hard on my family, extremely hard on my children. For a parent, when you get up in the morning and walk out the door and your 10-year-old says, "Be careful, Daddy," we would think life should be reversed, that we should be telling our children as they walk out the door, you be careful, you be safe. But my children fear for my life every day as I leave to this still.
Having seen this tragedy, I have made sure that I don't answer my cell phone and try to make it so I'm not driving distracted. And I've also encouraged everyone that I can within my family to avoid that type of situation, because it's just an immense tragedy that occurred.
You choose and text to drive, you might be fine one day. Next day, you're going to be right here in the same seat. You're going to be hanging out with these same people, having the same thoughts I'm having.
And it takes a split second, and you don't even think about it. You think, I can do this. But you are risking yourself and others, and it's not worth it. Because no text is that important.
A crackdown against repeat drunk drivers. Today, Governor Cuomo ordered the Department of Motor Vehicles to issue new regulations that he says will give New York some of the toughest protections in the nation against repeat drunk drivers. You have all heard the stories lately about drivers being arrested or convicted of drunk driving for a 7th, 8th, maybe even a 9th time. The state says it's getting those drivers off the road now for good. This all goes into effect as of today. And as Brandon Lewis explains, for the woman who fought for these changes, it was a long and painful road.
And this was what I used to research the law on license suspensions and revocations.
Earlier this year, Linda Roselle Shannon used her 25 years experience as an analyst with the DMV to write Charlotte's Law, which would take away one's driver's license after 3 DWI convictions.
Yeah, I thought it was extreme, but I thought we needed extreme measures because every other week I was hearing on the news someone with 9 DWIs, someone with 8 DWIs, and they get their license back.
It was here near Proctor's nearly 3 years ago when Roselle Shannon's mother-in-law was leaving her job as a volunteer and heading home for the night. As she crossed this crosswalk, she was hit and killed by a driver with multiple DWI convictions, someone who wouldn't have had a license if this law was in place.
She had a lot of life in her, And, you know, despite reports that she was an elderly woman by age, she was very active and in no way expected that to be her last day on earth.
Ultimately, Charlotte's Law died on the Senate floor, but found new life from Governor Cuomo. The new initiative takes parts from the law, such as permanently revoking the license for persistent drunk and dangerous drivers.
I started to cry because even though I read the governor's proclamation that went out and I didn't see the name Charlotte's Law, I still felt a victory for my mom and for everyone who had lost someone to a drunk or dangerous driver.
The governor's office estimates some 20,000 drivers will have their license permanently revoked or delayed this year alone from the new regulations. Brandon Lewis, CBS 6 News.
Well, our fact finders did some digging. Right now, more than 50,000 drivers with valid or suspended licenses have 3 or more alcohol-related convictions on their record. And roughly 17,000 licensed drivers who have 3 or more convictions have been involved in at least one crash. About 30% of all deadly crashes in New York are alcohol-related.
My day started like any other normal day. I was at work. My son called me. Generally, he called every day after work, let me know what's going on, how his day was going. Chris was 24 at the time. We was fortunate as parents as we never had any trouble with him with the law. He was a typical teenager, a pretty happy-go-lucky young man. He was in a good career where he was learning electrical work, building new homes. And he called me that day and told me everything was going on. He was really enjoying his new pickup truck. But he would also tell me that he got laid off, but had an interview with the next day. So he seemed like he was in pretty high spirits. Later on, I found out that as Chris went home, he had a couple of his friends come over and they started partying. And they were partying pretty heavy. The way that I was told was his friends left and he called his aunt and wanted to show off his new truck. He just drove a couple blocks over from his house, actually it was 2 streets, to pick her up and take her for a ride around the neighborhood. But they started speeding. They failed to stop for a controlled intersection, and they T-boned a minivan. It was 8:30 p.m. on a Thursday evening when I received that phone call that my son was involved into a car crash. Not knowing what happened, I immediately drove down to the accident site, which was only a few blocks from my son's home. When I drove down to a subdivision, which we drove down 100 times, I started seeing both sides of the highway lined up with police cars, ambulance, and there was even a medevac helicopter sitting on the edge of the golf course. You have no idea what you're fixing to get into. I didn't know if my son was hurt, didn't know if he was alive, didn't know if he was dead. As I walked up to his vehicle, I seen the front end of his pickup truck all smashed in, seen a cracked windshield with a little blood on there. Both doors of his pickup were open. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Immediately I thought it was Chris, but it wasn't the voice I wanted to hear. It was a police officer asking me what I'm doing at this vehicle as I was at a crime scene. I turned around and looked at him and I said, "This is my son's vehicle. Where's my son at?" Finally, he told me that my son was in a police car and he's okay, that I need to walk across the street as he needs to interview me later. As I was looking around, trying to figure what took place, I see a minivan sitting alongside of a tree. As I'm looking at the van, I see the front door on the right-hand side gone. I see where you have your slider doors for getting in and out of back passengers. I see that totally crushed in. I see blood on the back window. After I got done looking at the van, halfway across the street, I see my son sitting in the back seat of a Florida Highway Patrol car. I looked at him and he looked at me. He put his hands in a praying motion and said, "Dad, I'm so sorry, please help me." Still not knowing what happened, still don't understand anything. Your heart is just in a turmoil as a parent. As someone that, you know, you think about them, just a few hours ago we're talking and everything's great. Now we're seeing all this mess and I don't understand anything because nobody will tell me anything. As we walked up to the police car and we opened the door to let Chris out, I smelled the alcohol and some of the realization of what took place that night hit me. My heart went to my feet because I knew there was alcohol involved in this car crash. As we're taking Chris over to the ambulance to have him checked out, my thoughts started to ream more on the people involved into the other vehicle. Now that you know your son is alive and he's going to be taken care of, my thoughts were how many people were in the vehicle and what kind of condition they were in. And that was starting to be a major concern for me after seeing all the damage done to the minivan. As we found out the next morning that the people in the minivan was a set of grandparents and their 13-year-old granddaughter that was coming home from supper. Because they were doing everything right, and my son was doing everything wrong. A little girl lost her life, a 13-year-old child. Her name is Shelby. And it's changed our lives forever. Over the next 10 months, we didn't know what Chris's fate was going to be. We know that he took the life of a young girl. We know in the state of Florida that DUI manslaughter brings 10.5 to 15 years. We also learned that he'll be charged with everybody that was hurt. And it sounds kind of strange, but when you also total out 2 vehicles, which he did, it can also be felony charges placed against you. So actually, he was looking at 19 years in prison for one decision to go out there and drink and drive. After 10 months of going through the legal system, we spent 2 hours in the courtroom. We listened to the grandparents go up on stage and take a picture of Shelby. The courtroom was total silence. When it was time for our family to speak, we spoke what a good kid Chris was, what he was, that we never had no trouble. He was a first-time offender. He was looking for leniency. When the judge finally decided what Chris's fate should be, we all was in total shock. The judge's statement was, Chris, you should spend 1 year in prison for every year that Shelby was alive. You also will spend 3 years of probation. You will also go to AA after spending 13 years in prison. He also said that you will never drive a car again in Florida. We revoked his license forever. Today, we're able to visit our son, something that Shelby's parents can't do. Chris is able to call. 10 minutes at a time is always allowed. You can't call them. They have to call collect. We're allowed to go up and visit with him on the weekends. You're also allowed to go visit him on holidays. This is how we live our lives today. For one decision to go out there and drink and drive. In closing, I'd like to say this. There's some lessons that can be learned from this story tonight. And it's very obvious what we do first. As we all know, we shouldn't drink and drive. And that's so important. Second, what do you do if you're with someone that is drinking? You don't want to ride with them. You need to do anything that you can to get him out behind that wheel. If you go out there with him, try to get him out of the car, say, let's go have a cup of coffee before we leave. I also need you to think about, we might have to call the law to get this car towed away. You may have to go out there, and it sounds extreme, but if you have to cut the tires. There's also programs to get you and your car home. There's a program called Tow to Go, sponsored by AAA. They will get you home. Whatever you have to do, it's not worth getting behind that wheel. A little girl should not have lost her life. My son should not be in prison. Never drink and drive. One bad decision, one bad evening will change your life and so many others forever.
Most of you will drive a car every day. You open the door, get in, buckle up, start the car, put it in drive, and head to your destination. Based on statistics, most people are more interested in how fast they get where they're going than getting there safely. Do you know how many people die in the U.S. in car wrecks every year? 42,000. That's right, 42,000 people a year get in their car, drive away, and never come back. Where did they go wrong? While you're driving, you incur 6 different conditions. These are the 6 conditions of driving. It's important that you recognize these conditions and that you drive accordingly. These conditions are always present, whether in our favor or not. Because of these conditions, no 2 trips are ever the same. Sometimes conditions can change during a trip. Every wreck that we could possibly be in can be contributed to at least one of these conditions. The 6 conditions of driving are driver, light, road, weather, vehicle, and traffic. When talking about the driver, I would like to start with a statistic. In the U.S., 85% of all traffic wrecks are due to driver error. You do not get in wrecks because of bad luck. You get in wrecks because you do things wrong. The driver is often the only condition that you can control. It's the driver's responsibility to know the rules of the road and the conditions in which you're driving. I would like to ask you a question. What is the #1 type of wreck in the U.S.? It's the rear-end collision. How does it happen? Not paying attention is not the answer. Following too close is the answer. Did you know that it takes the average person 1 second to see the brake lights of the car in front of them and then move their foot to the brake? The driver's not pressed the brake. They've just moved their foot to the brake. You are human. It takes a second or so to react to what you see. So if you are 1 second behind the car in front of you and they slam on the brakes, you are going to hit them. So what is a safe following distance? Well, the answer is 3 seconds. Your vehicle should be 3 seconds behind the car in front of you under normal driving conditions. When conditions change, such as rain, you should increase your following distance. So how does the 3-second rule work? Well, as the car in front of you passes a stationary object, such as a sign or pavement marking, you should be able to count 3 seconds before you cross that same object. If you do not leave enough time to react, then you are relying on the person in front of you to not slam on brakes. When you follow too closely, you do not control your fate. The person in front of you controls your fate. So if you run into the car in front of you, it's not because you're having a bad day or because the guy in front of you is a jerk. It's because you did not leave yourself enough room to react to what you saw. Other factors the driver has to deal with are hearing, vision, illness, fatigue, drowsiness, and mobility. Teenagers love to listen to music. This is okay, but you need to remember that you also need to be able to hear things outside of music while you are driving. You need to be able to hear emergency vehicles, horns from other vehicles, and hear things in your own car, such as tire problems or engine knocking. You should never wear earphones while driving. Vision. Most decisions you make are based on what you can see. As you get older, your eyesight may diminish. If you notice this, you should get corrective lenses immediately. You should use sunglasses when necessary and make sure to use your sun visor when the sun is low in the sky. When changing lanes, you should always check your blind spot to make sure it's clear to move into the other lane. Do you know what a blind spot is? It's the area beside your vehicle that you cannot see in your mirrors. It's located in the lane beside you, left or right, across from your back tire. You should spend most of your time looking in front of you. You should only check traffic behind you every 10 seconds. You should also avoid looking at one thing more than a second or so. Your eyes should be scanning the road ahead of you. Illness. Everyone gets sick. Medication is a wonderful asset to our lives. However, some medication can make you feel less than 100%. It is your responsibility to know the effects of any medication before you drive. If you're driving and you start to feel lightheaded or dizzy from medication, you should pull over immediately and call for help. You can receive a DUI from prescription medication. If you're involved in a wreck and it can be proven that you were impaired, then the law will prosecute you. The victims will seek justice as well. In addition, you could be seriously injured or killed. Drowsiness. Drowsiness comes from a lack of visual stimulation. In the mornings when you're at school and you start to feel sleepy, you may not be tired, but you may be drowsy. It's easy to become drowsy when driving on long road trips. What are some of the things you can do when you feel drowsy? Well, you can open a window and vent in some fresh air. You can turn on the radio and sing along. You can stop and get out where safe and exercise or stretch. You can also bring some food and you can eat. As you eat, your body heats up, which can help with drowsiness. You may also find you get drowsy when you drive at certain times during the day. Do not ignore this fact. You can try to avoid driving during that time or have someone else drive. If these things do not work, then pull over safely and let someone else drive or call for help. Fatigue. Do you ever get tired? Fatigue is different than drowsiness. Fatigue is when your body is in or going into a state of exhaustion. You go to school or work all day, then you have practice or errands, then you have to drive home. The danger with fatigue is that it can only be fixed by sleep or rest. If you are too tired to drive, then let a friend drive or call for help. You need to see the big picture. If you die in a car because you were tired, they did not bring you back in life. It's over. Slow down. Increase your following distance. Mobility. At a young age, your mobility will probably not be a big issue. However, as you get older, it may become a problem. You will need to turn and look back and beside you from time to time. We've talked about checking blind spots when you change lanes and how imperative it is to turn your head and look into the blind spot. You also need to look back when you put your vehicle in reverse. You should not use your mirrors when backing up because of blind spots. A child or person could easily walk into the path of your vehicle and you will not see them unless you are turned and looking out of the back window. Distracted driver. Drivers today are more distracted than ever. With new technology come great things. However, using these things in the car can prove to be deadly. Using radios, CD players, MP3 players, navigational systems, cell phones, and computers are just a few of the items of distraction. When you use any of these items while driving, you're doing two things at one time. When you're talking on your cell phone, are you focused on the call or you're driving? When you're changing out your CDs or texting, are you more focused on the phone or on your driving? With the new GPS systems, we can find our locations easier than ever before. But you should never try and put in the address while you're driving. You should pull over and then put the address into the GPS. Texting and driving is now proven to be more dangerous than drinking and driving. Plus, it's against the law. Habits. Habits are formed from repetition. You have many habits in your daily lives. How many of you brushed your teeth this morning? Did you put your toothbrush under the water? Did you ever think about it? It's been proven that it takes 14 days to form a habit. However, it takes 21 days to replace that habit. It's very important that we form good habits. It's also important that we recognize the bad habits we picked up and replace those habits with good ones. Mental conditions. You will have to deal with mental conditions when you drive. Everyone has to deal with things like stress and emotions. You may be dealing with exams or meeting a deadline or listening to the horn from the guy behind you. As you become emotionally charged, it will affect your attitude. You will have to find ways to deal with these emotions. This can lead to road rage. There are two kinds of road rage. The first kind is you having road rage. When you reach this state, you may be doing things that you normally would not do. You may take risks that you wouldn't take. You may put yourself in a position to be injured or even killed. Second, there is road rage against you. When this happens, you have someone who is willing to cause bodily harm to prove their anger. Your reaction to this could add fuel to the fire. Every year, people are shot, beat up, driven off the road, cursed at, flipped off, and assaulted from people who have road rage. You should always try and defuse the situation. If someone is showing signs of road rage against you, you will need to keep a level head. Try saying, "I'm sorry." Remember, there's always someone crazier than you. Light conditions. Almost all the decisions a driver makes is based on what they see. If you cannot see clearly, you may not make a wise decision. In order to see clearly, you must have adequate light. Too much light or too little light can be dangerous. Too much light in the rain or fog will only reflect the light back into your eyes. You should always use your low beam headlights in the rain and fog. You may experience too much light when the sun is low in the sky, early in the morning and late in the evening. Make sure you use sunglasses when needed, and always use your sun visor to minimize the effect of sun glare. Have you ever heard of overrunning your headlights? Do you know what that means? The average car low beam headlights will give you about 100 feet of vision. you'll have about 200 feet of vision with your high beam headlights. When you're traveling at a speed of 35 miles an hour, it will take you about 100 feet to stop. When you're traveling at 53 miles per hour, it will take you 200 feet to stop. In both situations above, if something is blocking the road, like a train, you would stop just in time. If you're going any faster than the speed I mentioned, you're overrunning your headlights. You would not have enough time to stop your vehicle. You should also make sure your headlights are clean from dirt and mud so you can utilize the maximum amount of light. Slow down. Increase your following distance. Road conditions. How do we know if a road is dangerous? What do we look for? There are many things that contribute to making roads more dangerous. First, over 90% of wrecks happen at intersections. Intersections are the most dangerous part of roads. Large intersections are dangerous, but small intersections are dangerous as well. Intersections are where people stop, slow down, turn, and cross the paths of other vehicles. You should be very cautious at intersections. This is not the place where you want to be casual and distracted. Turn lanes offer a great deal of relief from roads. Roads with few or no turn lanes are more dangerous. You should also be aware of the shape of the road, such as straight, flat, banked, hills, and signs. The surface of the road, for example, concrete, asphalt, sand, dirt, gravel, oil, or water. You should be aware of the shoulder of the road. Is there a drop-off, sand, or packed dirt? You should also know how to use the interstate shoulder. If you have to pull over on the interstate, you should move your vehicle completely off the road into the grass. The shoulder is used for vehicles to slow down and speed up if they're re-entering the interstate. Weather conditions. You will drive in many different types of weather conditions. The most common adverse weather condition that will occur is rain. Whenever conditions are less than ideal, you should double your following distance. Your car is equipped with wipers and tires to help you deal with the rain, but you still need to drive differently than you do when the roads are dry and your vision is better. The first 15 minutes of rain is especially dangerous, as water mixes with sand, gravel, oil, and grease. After 15 minutes, most of those elements are washed off the road, leaving just water. You should watch out for water that is puddled up. This can lead to hydroplaning. When hydroplaning occurs, your tires are not touching the road. There's a small film of water in between your tires and the road. You'll skid as if you're on ice. When skidding, you should not press the brake. If your tires lock, you cannot steer the vehicle. Driving in fog can be very dangerous too. Your vision is very limited. Therefore, you should slow down. In heavy fog, it's also hard for other people to see you. You have danger in front of you and behind you. You may want to use your emergency flashers to draw attention to those drivers who may be driving too fast. You may also have to drive in the snow or ice. These conditions are the most dangerous because you have the least amount of traction. Following distance should be tripled. When braking on snow or ice, you should use light pumps on the pedal and start braking 3 times sooner than you normally would. The best way to get good traction on ice is using chains on your tires. Slow down. Increase your following distance. Traffic conditions. We share the road with other people. Sometimes we have a few people around us, and sometimes we have hundreds. You'll need to be aware of the other cars on the road. Sometimes people do things wrong, and you need to be ready to react when that happens. A good plan to have is as follows. Scan the road ahead at least 12 to 17 seconds. Identify hazards early. Predict what others may do and decide what you will do if. Execute your decision. Traffic conditions can change while you're driving. You will drive in city traffic, secondary traffic, open road traffic, highway traffic, and interstate traffic. In the city is where most wrecks occur. This is the area where you find the highest number of vehicles. In the city, you also have to deal with more situations. You will incur 300 situations per mile in the city. You may have multiple lanes, turn lanes, traffic lights. Roads will usually be straight and wide. Speeds are often 35 to 45 miles per hour. Secondary roads are designed to take some traffic off of the main city roads. These roads may be more narrow, and curves and hills are often more sharp. Secondary roads usually have fewer turn lanes, which can congest traffic. Speeds may be 25 to 55 miles per hour. Open road driving is like driving out in the country. Many times these roads have 2 lanes. You You will only incur 100 situations per mile. Speeds are often faster than on the city and secondary roads, usually 45 to 60 miles per hour. Interstates are the safest roads to drive on because they have no intersections or railroad crossings. They have at least 4 lanes, and the lanes are always divided. Roads are usually flat and straight, but speeds are usually high, from 60 to 70 miles per hour. When wrecks occur on the interstate, they can be deadly because of the high rate of speed. The faster you go, the greater chance of death when involved in a collision. Slow down. Increase your following distance. Pedestrians are considered traffic as well. People walking should walk against traffic. People riding bikes should ride with traffic. Pedestrians should cross the road at intersections and marked crosswalks. However, if someone is not crossing in these designated areas, you still must yield to them. The vehicle always yields to the pedestrian. When you incur someone walking or riding a bike, you should always give them plenty of room in case they fall. As you approach a pedestrian, look at the oncoming traffic. If it's clear, then signal and move safely around the pedestrian. If there's oncoming traffic, you may need to slow down and let the vehicles pass and then move around the pedestrian. Stay alert around areas like schools, parks, and playgrounds. Motorcycles are involved in many collisions in the U.S. 2/3 of all collisions involving motorcycles also involve a vehicle. Usually it's the vehicle's fault, and usually the driver did not see the motorcycle. Motorcycles are harder to see, and they give the driver little or no protection. Motorcycles are entitled to the full width of the lane, and they can ride 2 abreast. School buses are part of the traffic we incur on the roads. School buses are carrying our loved ones. School bus laws vary state to state. Make sure you speak to your driving instructor about the school bus laws in your state. You will always stop when you're traveling in the same direction as the bus, and the school bus is stopped loading or unloading children. The red lights are flashing and the stop sign is extended. You must also stop when you're traveling in the opposite direction, with the exception of state rules. For example, in many states, you do not have to stop if the road is separated by a physical barrier. You will also incur emergency vehicles. You should always give the right of way to emergency vehicles. When an emergency vehicle is approaching you from behind or in front, you should pull over to the right and stop if possible. Never pull to the left. You should let the emergency vehicle go left if needed. Never run a stop sign or red light if an emergency vehicle is behind you. If you cannot get out of the way, then stop and let the emergency vehicle go around you. Animals make their way into the roads as well. You should be aware of your surroundings if at all possible. When you're driving out in the country with little light outside of the light from your vehicle, you may see deer, possum, rabbits, foxes, even bears. When driving in areas where there are lots of trees, you may see a lot of squirrels. In neighborhoods, you may see dogs and cats. No one wants to hit animals. However, you should never create a more serious collision because of an animal. You should never hit a tree or put your vehicle in a ditch over an animal. If the vehicle behind you is very close and you see a squirrel, don't cause a serious collision over the animal. If it is safe to brake and avoid hitting the animal, then by all means do so. No matter how special the animal is, no animal life is as valuable as a human life. Blind spots and no zones. These are areas you cannot see when looking in your mirrors. Some blind spots are bigger than others depending on different types of vehicles. The blind spot is in the left and right lane, about where your back tire is. When you change lanes, you should signal and check your blind spot quickly. If a car is in your blind spot, you should stay in your lane. You also should know when you're riding in someone else's blind spot. You never want to do that, especially in trucks' blind spots. They are called no zones. Because of the sides on trucks, their blind spots can be huge. If you cannot see the truck's mirrors, they cannot see you. You should stay 200 feet behind and at least 20 feet in front of trucks. The vehicle condition is your responsibility. Usually, our cars do not fail us. Usually, they're signs of problems, and the problems do not get fixed. The tires are the only part of the car that's actually touching the road. Tires are not going to last forever, and the lifespan of your tires depend on 2 things. First is the quality of the tire you purchased, and the second is how you drive your car. The faster you drive, the quicker you wear down the tires. Tires have tread on them for water. You can hydroplane with new tires if there's enough water on the road and your speed is too fast. The more tread you have, the more water is channeled out from under the tire. To pass inspection in most states, you can put the head of a penny into the grooves and the rubber should reach the top of Lincoln's head. Your brakes are very important. Your brake pads will not last forever either. The lifespan of brake pads is based on quality and speed as well. The faster you drive, the more often and harder you need to press the brakes. If your pad starts to make a squeaking noise, you should have them checked. Your brake fluid is vital as well. This creates the pressure needed to squeeze the pads in order to stop your car. If your fluid is too low, you notice the brake pedal going down more toward the floor than normal. You should have it checked immediately. Your car's temperature is regulated by airflow and water or coolant through the cooling system. If your car begins to run hot, you may want to check the front grille and make sure nothing is obstructing the airflow. You may also be low on coolant. Water works fine, but water also freezes and expands. If you always use antifreeze coolant in your car, you don't need to worry about the coolant system in winter. But if you put water into your system during the warmer months, you will need to get the system flushed and have antifreeze coolant put in. There are many other aspects of the vehicle, such as the battery, belts, transmission fluid, windshield fluid, headrests, seat belts, mirrors, and lights. You may never have to deal with any of these items, but you will need to make sure someone else does. I know that seems like a lot, so let's just wrap it all up with one word: safety. Look out for yourself and look out for other drivers on the road. I want to wish you many years of safe driving.
It's late afternoon and snow is starting to accumulate.
Watch out!
You're hoping to make it back from work before it gets too heavy. Too bad home is at the bottom of this hill.
Watch out, guys, here comes another one.
When wet snow meets cold road,
oh, people, don't even try.
The danger begins.
Look out, lady!
Watch out!
So if it were you driving down an icy hill, what would you do to avoid becoming a frozen pinball?
Oh my God! So you think you'd survive? Sunday nights at 9 on the Weather Channel.
The biggest problem facing most drivers is skidding on slick, icy, or snow-covered roads. If the back of your vehicle starts to skid, don't panic. Just take your foot off the accelerator and steer in the direction you want the front wheels to go. If you have standard brakes, pump them gently. For anti-lock brakes, just apply steady pressure. The best advice for driving in bad winter weather is to avoid doing it all together if you can. But if you have to hit the road, make sure you monitor weather reports, stay alert, slow down, and stay in control.
My name is Officer Brett Katinsky with the Fairfax County Police Department. I'm a crime prevention officer out of Sully District Station. Some of the typical things that you need to do to prepare yourself for driving in the winter months, especially when it snows out, have an emergency pack in your car. You want to make sure that you have routine maintenance done on your vehicle, have all the fluids checked. You can even have a mechanic check your car for winter time, just to make sure that you're not going to have a breakdown when you're out there driving in the winter months. Make sure that you maintain a safe distance from the vehicles that are in front of you. Your stopping distance is going to be a lot longer if you do try to make an emergency stop. Make sure that you have your lights on if it's snowing out, that your car is cleared off of all snow, and make sure that you use your blinkers whenever you're going to change directions and leave yourself enough time to get wherever you're going. Some more specific items that you should have in your vehicle to be prepared for winter. You might want to carry a blanket and some extra sleeping bags with you, a flashlight with extra batteries, a first aid kit, a knife, high-calorie, non-perishable food such as energy bars, extra clothing, a bag of sand or cat litter, a small shovel, windshield scraper and a brush, a toolkit, some tow chains, and booster cables.
My name is MPO Michelle Humphreys. I'm an instructor at the Emergency Vehicle Operations Center of Fairfax County Police Department. We can gear ourselves up for inclement weather by doing some things before you even get in the car to drive. And one of those things, most importantly, is check your tire pressure. Most people do not check their tire pressure. If the tire manufacturer tells you it should have 44 in the tire and you only have 20 and you head out, you could lose your tire on an on and off ramp simply because you didn't check the air pressure. So air pressure is important. The other thing is tire tread. You have to make sure that you have the proper tire tread for your vehicles because that is what's going to channel the water away from your tire. So checking your tread routinely is important. Another thing you can do is make sure that your windshield wipers are working. Make sure that your headlights are clean. 90% of what we take in is through our eyes. And if we cannot see because the windshield wipers are not working or the headlights are not working, then you've already defeated yourself in the beginning. Okay, during inclement weather, several things can occur. I highly recommend that you learn to driving during that season. Some things that can occur, one is an oversteer. An oversteer skid is when the rear tires lose friction and begin to spin. If not corrected, you can result in a complete spin out. Some of the corrective measures for an oversteer is you first have to come off of the gas completely, off of the brake. You need to look where you want the car to go. Your eyes and your hands work together, so where your eyes go, your hands will follow. And then countersteer the vehicle. And countersteer means steer in the direction of the skid, not the opposite. An understeer skid is where the front tires lose traction and the vehicle no longer has the capability of steering. And in order to correct that, you have to come off of the gas, off of the brake, and straighten the wheel and then reintroduce your steering in order to recover from the skid. During slippery conditions, an important thing to know while driving are these techniques because they will save your life. Having the knowledge of the techniques also gives you confidence to go out there and drive knowing you are going to be able to recover from the skids that you might encounter. It's important to keep a safe distance between you and the driver in front of you so that you can anticipate what's going to happen, especially in inclement weather. You should do this throughout the whole year, but during inclement weather, you need to make sure that you have this distance because if something happens, you need to be able to react quickly. Keeping a safe distance means keeping yourself at least a car length between you and the car in front of you. And in order to do this, you just count a stationary item, and once you pass that stationary item, count 3 to 6 seconds, and that's how much distance you should keep.
With heavy rain comes the possibility of flooding. Here are a few tips to keep you safe on the roads. First, just like in winter weather, try to keep a little more distance between your vehicle and the vehicle in front of you. 4 to 5 seconds is a good rule. Also, watch for spray from larger vehicles like trucks. Be sure to turn on your lights. Remember, it's the law. Never try to cross a road that is flooded. It only takes a few inches of swiftly moving water to carry away smaller vehicles. Just remember, turn around, don't drown. If a road is closed, please do not try to move or try and drive around the barricades. The road's been closed for your safety. Try not to drive too fast in areas with standing water. This could cause you to hydroplane and lose control of your vehicle. And watch for debris in the roadway, such as downed trees or limbs. And if you come across a downed power line, please do not try to move the line. Stay well away and contact your local authorities. Drive safely.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dennis Durbin, and I'm a pediatric emergency physician, and I also co-direct the Center for Injury Research and Prevention at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where we've spent nearly 15 years studying how best to protect children in car crashes. Today, I'm here to give parents information coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics on new recommendations to keep kids as safe as possible in the car. The AAP's new recommendations reflect the best science available in the field of child passenger safety. Following these recommendations will help you make the best choice possible to keep your child as safe as you can on every trip you take. The American Academy of Pediatrics now advises that infants and toddlers should ride in rear-facing car seats until at least age 2, or until they outgrow the upper height and weight limits of the seat. This information can always be found on the label on the back of the car seat. Once your toddler reaches the upper height and weight limits for a rear-facing seat, he should ride in a forward-facing car seat with a 5-point harness until he outgrows the height and weight limits for that seat. Older children should ride in a belt positioning booster seat after outgrowing the forward-facing car seat limits, and should remain in a booster seat until they are 4 feet 9 inches tall, which for most kids is usually between 8 and 12 years old. All passengers of any age should ride in a lap and shoulder seatbelt once they have grown big enough for the seatbelt to fit properly. Again, around 4 feet 9 or 8 to 12 years old. Finally, all children should ride in the back seat until they are 13 years old. The main change parents will notice in the new recommendations is that most children should remain in a rear-facing car safety seat until they are 2 years old. A rear-facing car seat does a better job of supporting the head, neck, and spine of infants and toddlers in a crash because it distributes the force of the collision over the entire body. For larger children, a forward-facing seat with a harness is safer than a booster, and a belt-positioning booster seat provides better protection than a seatbelt alone until the seatbelt fits correctly. Parents often look forward to transitioning their children from one car seat stage to the next, but these transitions should generally be delayed for as long as possible until the child fully outgrows the car seat that they're using at each stage. There are a few common questions parents ask when they hear the updates. One is, when should I turn the car seat to face forward if my child is small or large for his or her age? The age 2 recommendation is not a deadline, but rather a guideline to help parents decide when to make the transition. Smaller children will benefit from remaining rear-facing longer, while other children may reach the maximum height or weight for their seat before 2 years of age. A common concern among parents is that leaving their children rear-facing longer will make their children uncomfortable or put them at an increased risk of a foot or leg injury in the event of a crash. Real-world studies show no evidence of an increased risk of foot or leg injuries among older children who are rear-facing in crashes. In fact, rear-facing children are as much as 5 times safer than forward-facing children when involved in crashes. Also, one of the added benefits of rear-facing is that children can fall asleep in a semi-reclined position. Children can safely and comfortably ride rear-facing until age 2. A final comment we hear a lot is about booster seats. Parents are often surprised that their child still needs a car safety seat when they're 8 to 12 years old. But here's how to think about it that makes much more sense. Seatbelts in cars are designed for adults, and the lap and shoulder belts do not fit children properly. If the lap belt sits high over a child's abdomen, she could sustain severe injuries to her abdominal organs. The booster seat keeps the lap and shoulder belts over strong bones, where they were designed to be, instead of the soft abdomen or neck. For more information about the new recommendations and the different types of car seats, visit www.chop.edu/carseat. From that site, you can also locate a child passenger safety technician to make a free appointment near your home. Thank you for watching, and I hope you find this information helpful in keeping your children as safe as possible on every trip you take.
You cut me off, you son of a b****. Get the hell out that car. Get the hell out right now. I'm gonna tear you a new. Come on, get out. I'm gonna beat the. Hey, I didn't know it was you.
A terrifying case of road rage, all of it caught on tape. Frantic 911 calls telling the story of a driver out of control and how an innocent young woman became a victim. ABC's Marcy Gonzalez has more on this chilling story.
We have got
This anxiety-filled 911 call came into police in Gainesville, Georgia early Friday morning. From a couple being repeatedly rammed by a pickup truck at full speed on the highway. According to police, the situation then turned horrific as the callers watched the pickup truck's driver swerve into oncoming traffic.
He's about to hit somebody head on.
Investigators say that's when 48-year-old Michael Williams, behind the wheel of the pickup truck, hit 22-year-old Chelsea Garish head on, killing both drivers.
Ma'am. Calm down. Somebody going head on about 70 miles an hour.
The couple heard on the 911 calls has not been identified by police, who are still working to find out why this happened.
And there were 2 other women in the car with Garish. Both were taken to the hospital and are expected to recover. But police say those people who dialed 911 did the absolute best thing, calling for help and not pulling over.
It really is a serious problem in this country, road rage. 70 miles per hour, that's terrifying.
Exactly.
Well, we're going to turn now to new developments in the road rage attack by a pack of motorcyclists on the driver of an SUV in New York City. We're seeing the man behind the wheel for the first time since that terrifying melee, which was all caught on tape. And on Friday, 4 of the bikers accused in the case appeared in court, including an undercover detective. ABC's Gio Benitez is here with more, and this detective could be in a lot of hot water this morning.
Oh, absolutely. Good morning to you, Bianna. You know, police are combing through more videos and photos showing the mob attack from new angles. Just as the alleged victim makes his first public appearance, some of the bikers face charges ranging from criminal mischief to gang assault.
This morning, for the first time in weeks, we catch a glimpse of the young father caught in the middle of that infamous biker attack.
Alex, tell us what you went through.
Outside his apartment, Alexi and Leanne said nothing, but police did.
Investigation is ongoing. We've had a total of 8 arrests in the case.
Just 2 weeks ago, a group of bikers was caught on video surrounding Leanne's black Range Rover. His wife and child also in the SUV. Leanne tries to get away. Moments later, some of the bikers attack the SUV, and police say Leanne was pulled out of his vehicle and beaten.
Assault first degree, criminal mischief in the second degree.
Many of the bikers went before a judge Friday, but rushed out of the courthouse. One who didn't show his face is Wojciech Braschok, an NYPD undercover cop who was off duty that day. Here he is on his red bike. Police say another video shows him bashing the SUV. While his lawyer says he's innocent, police charged him with gang assault.
So what could he have done to diffuse this situation?
Yell out to everybody, Chicky, the cops are coming. His loyalty should not have been to those comrades and colleagues of his, but to the innocent man, his wife, and his child in the car.
This morning, investigators wonder if other cops were also there. Something New York City's police commissioner isn't ready to talk about.
No, we're not going to discuss that.
And the new question this morning, what exactly set off the violence? A lawyer for one of the bikers reportedly said a water bottle may have been tossed from that black SUV to provoke the bikers. Leanne's attorney is still not commenting on this case.
Nearly 2 weeks on, and this case is still white hot.
Oh yeah, so goes on.
Hi, I'm Lauren Fix, the car coach. The New York State Troopers are there to serve and protect. They also have other programs to help you get to your destination safely. One of the state priorities is to ensure the safety of all of those who use New York's highways. As they see it, their job is to make the state's roadways safer by reducing injuries, property damage, and the loss of life caused by motor vehicle crashes.
Of the 10 traffic safety officers around the state, what we do is compile statistic analysis of what the troopers are doing. Accident, crash rates, enforcement rates, where the tickets are being written versus where the accidents are happening, so we can redirect resources in the areas that need it, that might not be getting it. Also manage federal grant money. As far as the federal government gives the state money to do highway traffic safety initiatives, and then it's filtered out to the troops. So they create a traffic safety plan for the areas they work in, if they have a bad area or a problem area, and we direct funding to that area so that troopers can have overtime, sometimes equipment, and they can target a specific problem that we're seeing in that area. So if you have a high DWI rate or DWI crash rate, we can do more checks in that area. If you have a speeding problem in another area, we move more resources to that area. And sometimes we even have new equipment come in, so we direct those to the areas that need it.
Troopers play a prominent role in reducing highway fatality rates in New York State and issue over 900,000 tickets each year. For more information, go to our website. I'm Lauren Fix, the car coach.
And good morning, everyone. Let's get straight to the breaking news out of Hollywood this morning.
Yeah, Paul Walker, one of the stars of the enormously popular Fast and Furious movies, dead in a car crash. The accident scene tells the story. There it is. Walker was a passenger in a Porsche that collided with a pole and caught fire. The actor had been attending his charity event to benefit typhoon victims in the Philippines. We have team coverage this morning, starting with Cecilia Vega at the crash site in Santa Clarita, California. Cecilia, good morning.
Dan, good morning to you. Just take a look at these fans who spent the night out here mourning the loss of Paul Walker. When this crash happened, the fire was so big, witnesses raced to put it out with fire extinguishers, but they simply could not. And now this, a crash site turned into a memorial. Overnight, it was a joyride that ended in this.
LA 156, we're on scene. We have one vehicle fully involved. We have confirmed 2 DUA.
When rescue crews arrived, the twisted remains of the car seen here in this video, obtained exclusively by ABC News, still engulfed in flames.
2 people dead in this call. One of them is Paul Walker from Fast and Furious.
We heard the crash. We heard the explosion, and we got up here as quick as we could to find out what it was.
The crash left the mangled car unrecognizable, the red Porsche wrapped around a tree.
There was nothing. We tried. We went through fire extinguishers.
According to Walker's friend Jim Torp, the passenger inside was actor Paul Walker and the driver, Walker's friend Roger Rodas. Both pronounced dead at the scene following what was supposed to be a quick spin.
This was just a tragic accident that happened on a joyride. They were just taking the car for a drive.
Investigators say it appears the driver lost control before hitting this tree in a quiet business park.
Paul wanted to go for a ride. Wanted to go for a ride in the car, so they went for a ride, and that was the last that we saw of them.
The 40-year-old actor rose to fame behind the wheel of fast cars in street races in the blockbuster Fast and Furious movies. On Sunday, he attended his charity toy drive and car show to help victims of last month's typhoon in the Philippines. Walker's most recent film, Hours, a movie about Hurricane Katrina, is set for release in 2 weeks.
This wasn't supposed to happen.
As the investigation into what caused this goes on, this morning, so does the shock over the death of an actor famous for his love of cars, on and off screen. And the sad irony of what happened out here is lost on no one. Hollywood is simply stunned. We've seen all night long tweets and reaction online from some of Hollywood's biggest stars. The person who was behind the wheel was a professional driver, but beyond why they crashed this morning, still under investigation.
A life cut way too short. Cecilia, our thanks to you. And Walker shot to fame as undercover cop Brian O'Connor in the hugely successful The Fast and the Furious movie series, which featured loads of wild chases and car crashes. He'd been in the middle of filming this 7th movie, scheduled to be released next summer. ABC's Chris Connolly is in Los Angeles with more on his career. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Bianna. It was a career that began back in the 80s on television. Yet for the last 12 years, Paul Walker's name and his obvious on-screen appeal had been synonymous with the Fast and Furious movies.
It's been a while since I've been behind the wheel of one of these.
A mainstay of the Fast and Furious franchise, Paul Walker was a foot-to-the-floor phenomenon. Yeah! Starring as both sides of the law, Brian O'Connor.
I'm not going anywhere.
The adrenalized Fast and Furious epics, which put him in all kinds of speed thrill scenarios, became off his calling card in Hollywood. Perfect vehicle for his can-do charm and that appealing grin. Born in Glendale, California, the blonde, blue-eyed Walker modeled as a child, later turning up in the 80s on such sitcoms as Who's the Boss?
Yeah, well, high school's no picnic either.
And Charles in Charge.
Right now, I don't like myself at all.
On the big screen, he'd be seen in late 90s movies like Varsity Blues.
I was lying in bed last night.
Before the Fast and Furious made him a star.
How was that one?
As news of his death spread Saturday night, Walker's friends and co-stars took to social media to pay tribute to his memory. From an Instagram account said to belong to his longtime Fast and Furious co-star, Vin Diesel. Brother, I will miss you very much. I am absolutely speechless. Heaven has gained a new angel. Rest in peace. At the time of his death, Walker was raising funds for the charity Reach Out Worldwide. He leaves behind a daughter, Meadow, and millions of saddened fans.
We both said that we were leaving the life behind.
Paul Walker died on Saturday in a car accident in Santa Clarita, California. He was 40 years old.
Additional cause for sadness. Hollywood often finds interesting roles for its best-looking actors to play once they're middle-aged. It's sad to think we'll miss out on those sort of performances from Paul Walker, Dan.
We will, and we should say that ABC News will continue to cover this story, especially as we await the results of the investigation. Chris, thank you.
I open my eyes, I try to see, but I'm blinded by the white light. I can't remember how, I can't remember why I'm lying here tonight, and I can't the pain, and I can't make it go. No, I can't stand the pain. How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes, got nowhere to run. The night goes on as I'm fading away. I'm sick of this life, I just want to scream. How could this happen to me? Everybody's screaming, I try to make a sound, but no one hears me. I'm slipping off the edge, I'm hanging by a thread. I wanna start this over again. So I try to hold on to a time